Devotion, Pat Smith, and then it's like an addendum to the book. After when she finishes the story, she writes, "A dream is not a dream. Why is one compelled to write? To set oneself apart, coconut, wrapped in solitude despite the wants of others. Virginia Woolf had her room. Proust, his shuttered windows. Marguerite Duras, her muted house. Dylan Thomas, his modest shed, all seeking an emptiness to imbue with words. The words that will penetrate virgin territory, crack unclaimed combinations, articulate the infinite. The words that formed Lolita, the lover, Our Lady of the Flowers. There are stacks of notebooks that speak of years of aborted efforts, the flattered euphoria, a relentless pacing of the boards. We must write, engaging in a myriad of struggles, as if breaking in a willful fall. We must write, but not without consistent effort and the measure of sacrifice. To channel the future, to revisit childhood, and to reign in the follies and horrors of the imagination for a pulsating race of readers. When I was yet in Paris, I received an invitation from Albert Camus' daughter, Catherine, to visit the Camus family house in Lourmarin. I seldom visit people's homes, for despite the hospitality offered, I've often suffered a feeling of confinement, of imagined pressure. Almost always I prefer the comfortable anonymity of a hotel, but in this case I accepted. The honor was mine. After taking leave of Simone, I circled back to Paris, boarded a train to Aix-en-Provence, and was met by Catherine's assistant for the hour's drive to Lourmarin. Any trepidation I may have felt dissipated with his kindness and the warmth of their reception. The ancient villa, where silkworms were once bred, had been acquired with Camus' Nobel Prize money, to be their home away from Paris. My small suitcase was brought to the room which had once been his. Gazing from the window, it was easy to see what drew him here: the naked sun, olive groves, dry patches of land dotted with tangles of yellow-white flowers, all seemed akin to the natural setting of his native Algeria. His room was his sanctuary. It was here that he labored over his unfinished masterwork, The First Man, unearthing his ancestors, reclaiming his personal genesis. He wrote undisturbed, behind the heavy wooden door, carved with twin griffins supporting a crown. I could well imagine young Catherine tracing their wings with her finger, desiring nothing more than for her papa to open it. I was 14 when Camus lost his life in a fatal car crash. In the news that followed were pictures of his children, and a description of his valise, found in a field in the rain at the scene, containing his last manuscript. It was a humbling experience to occupy, even briefly, the room where he had written it. Modestly furnished, there were shelves lined with a range of his books, the 3 volumes of the set of the Journal of the Eugène Delacroix, Lettres de Gauguin, La Vie de Mahomet, Le Viol de Foule, Serge Chacotini's chillingly relevant appraisal of the abuse of the masses through political propaganda. Before heading downstairs, I returned to the window. Somewhere across the field, beyond the cypress trees, one may enter the cemetery where he rests aside his wife. His name somewhat eroded, as if nature had written a story of her own. Catherine made lunch for us and prepared a violet-colored tea, a medicinal for my chronic cough. The conversation was warm and natural, without a moment's awkwardness. Afterward, I joined Catherine's daughter for a long walk with the dog through the adjoining fields. He spoke of the trees, identifying them: cypress, fir, pine, young olive trees, fig, cherry trees heavy with fruit, and the commanding cedar of Lebanon. She plucked some cherries for us as the dogs romped rapidly ahead. Toward the end of our walk, she handed me a lancer stem capped with tiny yellow flowers, a wild thing with a wisp of a fragrance. "It's called immortelle," she said. When we returned, Catherine's assistant beckoned me to the downstairs office, where they work on and perform official duties. It was modest and contained an air of tranquil productivity. He asked if I would like to see the manuscript. I was so astonished that I could hardly manage an answer. I was asked to wash my hands, which I did with some solemnity. Camus' daughter entered, praising the manuscript of the Le Premier Homme, the first man, on the desk before me, and went and sat in a chair, giving us distance enough so that I could feel alone with it. For the next hour I was privileged to examine the entire manuscript, page by page. It was in his handwritten, each page suggesting a sense of unflinching unity with his subject. One could not help but thank the gods for apportioning Camus with a righteous and judicious pen. I turned each page carefully, marveling at the aesthetic beauty of each leaf. The first 100 watermarked sheets had Albert Camus engraved on the left-hand side. The remaining were not personalized, as though he had wearied of seeing his own name. Several pages were augmented with his confident marking, lines carefully revised and sections firmly crossed out. One could feel a sense of focused mission and the racing heart properly in the last words of the final paragraph, the last he was to write. I was indebted to Catherine for allowing me to examine her father's manuscript, primed to embrace this precious time, wanting for nothing. But slowly I discerned a familiar shift in my concentration, that compulsion that prohibits me from completely surrendering to a work of art, drawing me from the halls of a favorite museum to my own drafting table, pressing me to close songs of innocence in order to experience, as Blake, a glimpse of the divine that may also become a poem. There is the decisive power of a singular work, a call to action, and I, time and again, am overcome with the hubris to believe I can answer that call. The words before me were elegant, blistering. My hands vibrated, infused with confidence. I had the urge to mount the stairs, close to heavy doors that had been his, sit before my own stack of foolscap, and begin at my own beginning, an act of guiltless sacrilege. I rested my fingertips on the edge of that last page. Catherine and I looked to one another, not saying a word. I handed her the manuscript, harboring a regret reserved for the end of an affair. I rose from the table, the unfinished violet tea gone cold, the immortelle left behind. Wandering into a small town, I pictured Camus rising from his desk, reluctantly setting his work aside, observed by the ghost of a girl He descended the stairs, follows his same route, past the clock tower with the late inscription, "The hours that pass devours us." He walks the same narrow cobblestone streets, taking his usual seat at a Café de l'Ormeau. He lights a cigarette and has a coffee, surrendering to the village room. In the distance, lavender hills, almond trees, blue Algerian sky. Inevitably, his mind will turn from the spur of amiable conversation back to his sanctuary, to a certain phrase that has yet to be resolved. Things are slow-moving. There's a pencil stub in my pocket. What is the task? To compose a work that communicates on several levels, as in a parable, devoid of the stain of cleverness. What is the dream? To write something fine, that would be better than I am, and that would justify my trials and indiscretions. To offer proof, through a scramble of words, that God exists. Why do I write? My finger as a stylus traces the question in the blank air, a familiar riddle, posed since youth, withdrawing from play, comrades, and the valley of love, girded with words a bit outside. Why do we write? A chorus erupt. Because we cannot simply live. And that's the end of this precious chapter from Patti Smith.